Good afternoon, Long Beach. Today, of course, we are presenting the 2021 proposed budget for the City of Long Beach. I'll be making some opening remarks, talking a little bit about the budget as an overview document, also addressing some additional recommendations that are part of the budget that go beyond the presentation that you're going to hear from Tom Modica, who's our city manager. Over the last many months, our city manager and our city team, the Department of Finance and others have been working on this budget presentation. It's a collection of information, of course, that we have collected through the community, through the realities of the budget, and through the departments themselves. This budget and its presentation is a collaboration and partnership, of course, with all the departments and our city manager. Like our 6 previous budgets, today's budget is balanced. We'll be including some recommendations also for the council to consider. The city's total proposed FY 2021 budget is $2.6 billion and funds the operations, of course, of our major seaport, our city water and storm drain, gas and refuse operations, as well as public safety, parks, libraries, and many city functions. Now, FY 21 is part of this process, and unlike past budgets, this is really a different reflection of the times we're living in. We are going to be leading through and continuing to budget through a COVID-19 pandemic. The COVID-19 health crisis is the single largest public health crisis of our lifetime. Addressing COVID-19 is going to require incredible sacrifice and hard work and tough decisions in this budget. COVID-19 has presented us with a significant budget deficit. As tax revenue is down, unemployment is real, and the city is not able to recoup all of the revenue they would typically make in a normal given year. This budget also reexamines ways that we deliver certain types of services, like healthcare, public safety, and makes large investments to infrastructure, homelessness, and most importantly in this moment, ensuring that we keep Long Beach healthy in the midst of this pandemic. We, of course, are at this health crisis, one that is facing every level of government, from our state to here in the city of Long Beach. So I want to walk everyone through this COVID-19 health crisis, and I think you have a slide, the next slide up in front of you. So this COVID-19 health crisis, we declared, of course, a local health emergency in March. We have spent, it's the next slide. There we go. We have spent over $100 million to respond to this health crisis. Now, a lot of those resources will be, of course, reimbursed through FEMA and other agencies, but we're talking about tens of thousands of tests and medical response and medical teams and health department and contact tracing. That work will continue. It is costly, but it's important to save lives and to do the work necessary to support our economy and our community. I was proud to lead a coalition of mayors to deliver almost $41 million to Long Beach to help with these efforts, and worked with our supervisor and LA County to also get an additional $13.5 million for testing. COVID-19 is the leading cause of death in Long Beach. It must be taken seriously, and it must be the centerpiece of how we budget this year and moving forward. We also know that we can expect COVID-19 to move into this next year's budget as we hopefully find a vaccine come this winter. We know that the economic crisis that has followed COVID-19 is the largest economic recession we've had since the Great Depression. And so there's a lot of work ahead of us. And in fact, one of the proposals we have in this budget is to create community public health councils to help address some of that work. So what does a COVID-19 economy look like in the future? We have put in this budget over $6.7 million to support local small businesses, and this is in grants to ensure that small businesses can get past this really tough time for workers. There's $1 million that I called for to assist any and every business that was affected by vandalism the night of May 31st. That's also included and has been supported by the City Council. And there's also additional things you're going to hear from in the City Manager's budget as well. I want to note that one of the important things that we must do in this economy is also protect workers. One of the proposals that came from staff in the budget process was to contract out certain services because we have a tough budget situation. services like parking citation service or public works surveying, parking meter collection. In my recommendations, I'm asking us to not contract out key employee jobs within the city. I believe that the best job can be done by those with the experience to work in our community, and we must ensure that these jobs stay local, and especially in this economy, that those that have given so much to our government in this time continue to have the security of their jobs. And so my recommendation as part of this budget is to not contract out local Long Beach jobs, because I believe our folks can not only do it better, but save costs in the near future. In addition to that, you'll see investments in job training and new programs to address income inequality around concepts like universal basic income in public banking. Our city manager is also going to discuss some significant additions to racial justice and equity. We know that we are in a unique moment in our history. We are in a movement where there is a demand, rightly so, for justice for all people. We've seen the Black Lives Matter movement on the streets, not just in Long Beach, but across the country. We know that there is incredible need from communities in the city, communities of color, the Black community, the Latinx community, or Cambodian community, for additional support and reinvestment. Now, the city's manager's budget is going to talk a lot about racial equity, about racial justice, around how we reinvest back into Black communities. And so Mr. Modica will specify that. And a lot of that is also tied to the City Council's framework for reconciliation document, which in fact will be out just later today. And so those will are partnership documents. We're going to look at new significant investments on racial justice. We must ensure that everyone has equity within our community, and there's significant funds in our budget to do so. We're also making some additional proposals, and that includes new investments to fund new health partnerships, community-led crisis response, violence prevention, and investments in public social workers. We're also proposing that 2 additional funds that are important to our community get structurally funded in the budget. I'm proposing to make the Justice Fund, which provides representation, of course, for members of our community that are undocumented, as part of the budget structurally, and our language access programs, which ensures that all members of the community, no matter what language they speak or where they're from, have access to their government so that they can be heard. So those are both structurally funded in this budget. We also continue to make significant impacts on housing and homelessness. We have over $52 million to address homelessness in this budget. And this includes new programs that are funded and that the City Council has supported, like eviction moratoriums. We know that we have a prohibition now on late fees and termination of Section 8 housing. The Council recently adopted inclusionary housing policies. And in this budget, we are facing, as we walk into the next few months, a national eviction crisis, where we know that many folks, renters and tenants, are going to lose access to their homes and only make homelessness even worse. And so as part of this budget, I am proposing that we establish a new fund to assist tenants who really need legal representation, a right to counsel. And that's also included in this budget. I want to also touch on public health and safety. Mr. Modica is going to go into detail in just a few minutes on how we are readjusting the budget. To be clear, every single department in this city is going to be receiving cuts. The one department that will not be receiving cuts is the health department, and rightly so in the middle of this pandemic. We are facing large structural deficits, and so there will be hard cuts on all of our other departments besides the health department. But we also know that we are reimagining public health and safety. And so there's new community-based policing and public health models that Mr. Modica will be discussing in a few minutes. These include combining quality of life teams with mental health evaluation teams. This includes transferring our crossing guard program from the police department to the Department of Public Works. It includes beginning a review of 911 calls for service and exploring a transition away from certain types of calls on non-emergency to ensure that folks that are responding are trained mental health professionals and others. I also want to add that as we move forward on the issue of public health and public safety, that this is an area that there is intense community conversation. A lot of the recommendations around public safety and public health you'll also find later today in the reconciliation document that staff will be presenting to the City Council later this afternoon. In this budget, we also have the largest infrastructure program in a generation continuing as part of this budget. That all, of course, was due to the initial Measure A that has already transformed 380 miles of local streets, paved alleys that have never been paved in the past, and upgraded over 70 public facilities. We created a $150 million infrastructure plan that will soon be ending. And so I'm asking the City Council to begin in this next fiscal year to establish a new 5-year infrastructure plan beginning in 2023 when we begin to see new revenues as it relates to Measure A. In addition, we have some additional recommendations around arts and culture, libraries, and youth sports. Because voters adopted Measure B just this last year, there'll be an additional $1.7 million to arts organizations, which is really exciting for those especially that are having a hard time in COVID-19. I also want to note that one of the staff recommendations was to cut library hours from 5 days a week down to 3. Which I understand we have to make difficult cuts. But I'm working with staff, and my proposal is to not make any cuts to our library system as it relates to hours, but instead keep libraries open 5 days a week as they currently are, and work in the future with the council to hopefully expand some key libraries even to 7 days a week. There's also a proposal from staff to increase the fees on youth sports. I also could not support that, especially right now when families are struggling. And so my proposal is to keep youth sport programs affordable and to not increase any fees in youth sports. I now also want to talk a little bit about some investments that we're looking at towards the future. In the budget and in the work we've done is investing in climate change and adaptation, our plan that we have. We know that global warming is in the future the single biggest threat to not just our city but to the world. And so as part of this budget, I'm asking the city as part of our CAP program to look at a new study and our dependence on oil. And as we transition to clean and new sustainable models, we have to also become less dependent on oil revenues for future city programs and city functions. And so the study will look at that so that we can more aggressively begin that transition. And as we know this year, as it relates to COVID and other years, oil becomes a less and less predictable model of revenue, and certainly one that's not sustainable for our community and for our planet. And finally, as we look to the future, there's been a lot of discussion in the city about how we re-budget. Now, obviously, our budget cycle has been going on for 6 months. And a lot of the budget has been locked in, and it gets locked in very early, and it's hard to make large structural changes oftentimes. And so this year, I'm asking, beginning in FY22, so essentially come October 1, I'm asking our city manager and our staff to begin a new zero-based budgeting approach to support additional community engagement as we begin the process for FY22. This will allow us to look at all of our core services, pension liabilities, and look at new approaches to spending and managing our departments. That's something that many of the council members have brought up in the past, and it's time and the opportunities in front of us to do that work. So how do we fund some of this work? And you're going to hear from our city manager. There are cuts that are being made within the budget, some significant cuts, but we're also looking at spending down some of our reserves, including recommendations that I'm making and that the city manager is making. When you think about what reserves are for, they're for emergencies. Well, we are in the largest health emergency that we've had in the last probably 100 years, and certainly the largest economic emergency that we've probably had in the last 50. This is exactly why you build up reserves, which we have. This is exactly when and the moment when you look to your reserves to spend them down responsibly, just some, so you can fund some of these projects and not decimate departments, services, and employees. And so with that, I want to pass this over to Mr. Modica. He is going to get into details about departments, where there are cuts, and where there are also some investments. And then we'll answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So the mayor gave a good high-level overview of what's in this budget. This is a very complex document. We are a very complex city, so there is a lot that I have to cover about kind of the more specifics of what's in the city manager's proposed budget, and then you heard the mayor has his recommendations on top of that. You'll notice there's things in that he had mentioned going a little bit different than city staff. That's exactly how this process should work. So I'm supportive of those. That's part of what we need to do is create ideas and bring those forward. They get massaged through the process by the mayor and then also massaged by the city council through public input. And that's how our democracy works. So I'd like to start walking you through this presentation. So I want to start with accomplishments. We have many, many accomplishments that we can be very proud of. First and foremost, spending over $100 million that we've spent and are planning to spend for COVID-19 response. That includes over 80,000 free tests for COVID, sheltering the homeless, free medical care, food, rent support, business assistance types programs. We've supported 20,000 BizPort online sessions for our small businesses and issued over 12,700 building permits. We've done very bold policies at the city council level, including inclusionary housing, tenant assistance policies, and we have 650 new affordable housing units in the pipeline. We've constructed our very first year-round homeless shelter, which will open just in a month or two. And we've continued our largest investment in infrastructure in a generation. We just a year ago opened our world-class Billie Jean King Main Library and the Long Beach City Hall and Civic Center Plaza. Our water quality grades are fantastic. At 87% of our city's beaches get A and B grades in the summer. And our animal care and compassion saves approach is working. We are a full-service city. We have a $2.6 billion operation, and we provide a wide variety of services through our 23 departments. We're a very complex, large organization with 37 different financial funds that represent a diverse city operation, and they all have their distinct funding sources. The majority of those funds, that $2.6 billion, however, are restricted. And what's really discretionary that we can spend on what most people think as our normal government services are about 20% of our budget in the general fund, and that's supported by tax revenue. So let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges. We have faced in this year unprecedented series of challenges. First and foremost, as the mayor mentioned, the biggest health crisis any of us have ever experienced through the COVID-19 global pandemic. We have had major fiscal and economic challenges which have been exacerbated by that pandemic. We have movements to end systemic racism, and we are facing the largest general fund shortfall in recent history. And so that $30 million FY21 general fund shortfall, think about what has happened this year. We have seen huge revenue losses, 9% loss in our sales tax, 38% loss in our hotel bed tax, 40% loss in oil revenue. We have seen costs continue to grow as the cost of services continue to increase. We are facing nearly 20% unemployment in our city, and there is major national uncertainty in our economy. That said, this budget still accomplishes very much in the midst of some very significant challenges. We have prioritized health and safety of our residents in light of the pandemic. We're maintaining those core services in a balanced way and while making some very difficult decisions. We are balancing the budget with an approach that considers multiple competing factors. We're implementing bold actions and investments towards work of racial equity and reconciliation. And this budget is really just the beginning. So I do want to spend a little bit of time on COVID-19 and how important our response has been and how much that has really changed life in the city government, but also in our entire community. And so we've responded very swiftly to the biggest health crisis in our generation. Over 100 people have been dedicated full-time to our city's Emergency Operations Center, which is now in its 5th month. 8,000 cases, over 8,000, have been reported, tracked, and investigated. We have established free medical care for over 4,100 individuals. We have sheltered over 300 people experiencing homelessness, first in community centers and now in hotels. And we have tested over 123,000 people through city drive-thrus and our private medical providers. We immediately established the Coronavirus Relief Fund and raised $1 million privately from donors and put that out through nonprofits to both help them and our response. We've created the first ever eviction moratorium, which was a significant deal at the City Council. We have business support through delays of fines and fees and new permitting processes to help our businesses quickly get back on their feet when they can through the health order and following the governor's health order. Creativity and adapting new models as we let them use their parking lots and create parklets and all these new models of how we can do business safely, and providing businesses with free personal protective equipment. We have a massive warehouse where we actually manage personal protective equipment for businesses, for some of the medical uses in our city, and it has over 1.7 million items in inventory. We have a full-time dedicated team doing business inspections to help our businesses be safe, and 4,700 of those inspections have happened. And we've rerouted city employees to be dedicated call centers, and they handle thousands and thousands of calls. Just in the past 2 months, we've handled over 24,000 calls, or 400 a day. So when we total the money we've received and we've spent either out of our general fund or our grants, it will be over the next, that we've spent, or over the next year and a little bit longer, over $100 million. We have also the CARES Act, the money that the mayor mentioned that he really was instrumental in getting from the state. Community support programs, $14.4 million that we'll be investing for a number of community programs. $6.75 million for a number of business support programs. And so the pandemic has significantly changed our operations and our focus. We've had to pivot from what we have normally done and divert workers through the emergency response powers to do things that they have never done before. It has impacted our daily operations, and we thank you everyone for your patience. We've also found ways to provide relief to residents and businesses, doing things like fee waivers and suspending street sweeping, but that's also had adverse impacts on the city as well that we've had to manage. There's been some silver lining. We've found new ways to reimagine how we do our business, how we deliver service, how we do things over the phone, how we do things through technology and telecommuting. And so moving on from COVID-19, I want to talk a little bit about racial equity and reconciliation. On June 23rd, the City Council, in a unanimous vote, took an incredibly bold step in adopting a resolution acknowledging racism as a public health crisis and establishing a framework for reconciliation. In just about 2 months, they asked us to do a Herculean effort to do 4 town hall meetings, 13 listening sessions, engaging over 1,600 participants, and creating a plan that will be released to the City Council today. A planning process that normally would take 9 to 12 months was performed in about 2 months. And so this budget takes the first concrete action as a first step. $3.2 million, $2.5 million of which of it is a structural enhancement, and $702,000 in one-time enhancements. So what are some of those items? Well, we'll be investing in youth and violence prevention and trauma-informed responses to community needs in the amount of $1.5 million. We're going to relook at how we provide homeless services, going from a firefighter-based model to a nurse-based model or social workers through moving our HEART team into our health department. We're looking at grant-funded positions in our libraries to support social work services. We're looking at a different library structure potentially, and the mayor made some comments on that about maybe doing a different approach. We're looking at investing in seniors. We're looking at investing in youth through our Be Safe program during the summer. In the public safety area, we're creating a new Office of Constitutional Policing. We'll have $150,000 to support reforms of our CPCC to do a full outside review and study of best practices and potential ballot measure. We'll have a fire diversity recruitment program. We're re-envisioning our police operations and looking at civilianization In particular, in this budget, 34 sworn police officers will be converted to 28 civilian positions. We're adding a deputy city manager to institutionalize equity in the city manager's office and moving the Office of Equity from health to city manager and supporting their staffing. We're also investing in training in our own employees of $100,000 for implicit bias and equity, and investing in language access. And so this budget utilizes what we call a balanced outcomes-based approach. We are solving a major $30 million shortfall while addressing the need for the pandemic and the need for action on racial equality. We are prioritizing and protecting our core services while recognizing we need to adjust others to acceptable service levels. Maybe not what we have wanted, but what we are able to accept. And we're doing budget balancing using both structural ongoing solutions and a combination of one-time solutions given the magnitude of the problem. And so before we get into reductions, I really want to talk about what we've maintained. We have maintained emergency response, including priority 1 and 2 police calls, our emergency medical and fire services. We have infrastructure funding for sidewalks and potholes, major facilities maintenance, maintenance of our parks, facilities, public spaces, graffiti abatement, landscape median maintenance, investing in our clean teams to get trash off our streets, investing in youth and senior programming, provision and implementation of affordable housing. We're assisting our small businesses through business assistance programs, water and gas good customer service, and support for economic development and business assistance. We have a multifaceted homeless response, investment in technology, and investment in a green fleet. We'll be looking at energy efficiency improvements for City Hall, for city facilities, and permitting and inspection services for our businesses and residential improvements so construction can keep going. We're investing and continuing our investment in animal care and in our tree trimming services. And so as we now turn to how are we going to solve this $30 million deficit, it's really a 5-step approach. The first is assistance from employees. The second is new or allocated revenues. The third is strategic investments. The fourth is efficiencies and innovations. And the fifth is service reductions. And I'm going to go through each one of these. In the area of assistance from employees groups, we have set a goal of $11 million in general fund savings, which could come at the bargaining table. This will be a negotiation, and we're in discussions for some longer-term contracts and some savings in this year to deal with this enormous problem. And so that could look like employee furloughs, for example. They are one-time solutions. They would help in FY21, but we'd have to then come up with other solutions in the future. Each one would be individually negotiated, and I can't get into too many details as that's a negotiation that happens at the bargaining table. But that could be up to a 10% impact to our employees and 26 furlough days. That will be hard, but it is something I'm asking everyone to participate in so that we can help stave off additional cuts. It could be the closure of city services for 1 day every 2 weeks, and it will impact our productivity and our ability to serve the public. But it will also help avoid significant layoffs, the equivalent of 106 positions not being eliminated, and stave off very significant impacts to the community. In the area of new allocated revenues, I'm proposing a 1% increase in our cannabis business license tax. That's authority that the voters have provided the city. We are currently at the low end of what voters have approved, and we're asking to move that up by 1% to generate $800,000. That money would help our racial equity and reconciliation process. We have additional Measure A money that will help prevent additional cuts to police and fire in the amount of $4.5 million. We're looking at a youth sports registration fee. The mayor mentioned this in his recommendations to take a different approach, but to look at how do we have a little bit of money come in to help with that program. We're looking at some increases in our vehicle parking pass and lot fees at El Dorado and our beaches, and adjusting our ambulance rates to keep up with the cost of service, which is happening in many jurisdictions, including the County of Los Angeles. We are looking for some additional assistance from our gas fund per Measure M, and that would be about a $1.3 million transfer. The gas fund is also going to be making investments in a number of different areas, and they are proposing an increase in the gas in our rates. We have not increased rates since 2016, and we are currently 32% behind our competitor, SoCalGas. We're looking at some increases in towing to recoup costs, and then the Measure B money, the new tax on hotels that voters approved, would be available for arts and the convention center. We also have some great improvements coming for our capital improvement plan, $491 million that the mayor had talked about. And I'd like to really focus on mobility and facilities. And so we're $1.2 million for alleys. We have $13 million for arterial streets. We have another $14 million for arterial corridor enhancements, $11 million for residential streets, nearly $10 million for ADA sidewalk improvements. We're funding Fire Station 9, and we're doing energy efficiency improvements. And of that money, about $18.5 million is a direct investment from Measure A. Let's talk more about some of the strategic investments. In the past year, the council came to the rescue of an asset that we love in our city, the Sunnyside Cemetery, and asked the city to take that on as a city responsibility, which we have. But that did not come with any funding source, so we need to fund that in the amount of $300,000. We're looking at new staffing for our Ethics Commission that voters approved under Measure CCC, and also rerouting some additional money in the Attorney's Office for that effort. And the Health Department is seeing a huge influx in dollars from both state grants, COVID, and others, and so we're investing in 10 new positions in the Health Fund to help them both spend that money and respond to the need. We're investing in our animal care with an investment of a full-time veterinarian and $100,000 in medical supplies for our Compassion Saves approach. And we're also increasing our water and parks need. As all of us have seen an increase in the cost of water, so does the city, so we need to increase that amount. And we're investing in a position now with so much grant money coming into the city, we're investing in our infrastructure to manage those grants. We're also investing in our runoff elections and November ballot, as well as the redistricting and census. I'm asking for a comprehensive fire operations study in the amount of $200,000 to help us plan for the future in our fire department and help us identify cost savings or revenue increases. We're investing in homeless and our rapid response. This is the money that helps us go out quickly and assess. And we're supporting money for plant needs. So we have a number of citywide strategic studies, including a comprehensive review of the Citizens Police Complaint Commission, the fire operations study. We're in the middle of implementing a fee study, which will come back to the council a little bit later, and investing in looking at all of our money to be able to invest in energy efficiency, which both reduces greenhouse gas emissions and saves money. We are investing in our police and fire academies and to ensure that those critical operations needs are met. And we have higher, and we may have higher attrition savings. We have to estimate how many people would be retiring. It may be higher than normal this year. And so if not, we'd have to cover that through some, if our estimates are a little off and we have not as many people retire, we'd have to cover that through Measure A. And then in the area of Fire Station 17, Fire Station 17 is in this budget. It is funded by Measure A for one more year. But we needed to make some decisions on whether we should apply for or draw down federal dollars that then would keep it going for longer. And at this point, it would require about $4.1 million in unidentified dollars in order to draw down those funds. So we are recommending that we do not do that at this juncture and keep it funded for one more year in Measure A at this time. So the next area, the third area, is efficiencies and innovations. We always look here before we get to any service reductions. How do we be more efficient? How do we look at different service models? We've been investing for several years in our city's fleet and bringing down the age of the fleet, and that has paid off. We are now, because of that investment, seeing savings from our maintenance in the amount of about $900,000. We've invested in new technology from our LB Co system, and that will save $600,000. And we have a number of other efficiencies from technology in our accounting area and ambulance billing, which will save money. We're also looking at how do we re-envision public safety service. We will be civilianizing sworn positions in our police department. 34 sworn positions will be turned into 29 civilian positions, saving $3.8 million. This includes using 16 police officers that will now be civilian units that will respond to those priority 3 calls. Those are the lowest level urgency calls that come into our dispatch center, nonviolent calls that will have civilians doing that work instead. We're looking at how do we civilianize our public safety equipment oversight, our facilities duties, and our air support unit. We're streamlining our jail operations, eliminating 12 positions as we consolidate into the public safety building. We are changing our heart team model, reducing in the fire department, but increasing in health, and having nurses do that function instead of firefighters, saving $450,000. And we're transferring the crossing guard program from PD to Public Works, reducing PD by $1.4 million. We're looking at both contracting in and contracting out. So we have about $1.1 million in savings that we can do by bringing in city staff where contractors are doing that now and saving money, including our 5G permit issuance and our streetlight maintenance, and we'll be street sweeping for the city of Rossmore. But we're also looking at contracting out in the staff proposal. That could save about $950,000. The mayor mentioned a different approach, which we'll be happy to talk about with the city council. And we're also evaluating and aligning budget to actuals, and where we don't have vacant positions where we can eliminate those, we are doing that. And so I want to get to the last area, which is really service reduction. So once we do all of those things, we do need to look at reducing services, unfortunately, given the scope of the problem. And so as we do that, we take that very seriously. We provide core services as a goal at acceptable service levels. We continue to meet local, state, and federal mandates and legal requirements, and it's important to preserve the operational capacity to operate effectively. And so we look at the outcomes of the service reduction rather than just an across-the-board approach. So I asked every department to participate, and then we look at each item to see what is it that meets those core goals. And so in total, we reduce about $18.8 million, but the net amount is about $16.3 after we invest in some of the equity and some of those strategic enhancements. All departments took reductions except for the health department. They have very small general fund, only about $2 million or 2% of their budget, and there actually are some increases in the health department. So let's look at those service reductions a little bit deeper. In public safety, we are proposing 59 sworn position reductions eliminated citywide, 54 of which would be police and 5 in fire. Of these reductions, 34 are in police. Of these reductions, 34 in police and 4 in fire are those civilianization. So the position goes from sworn to civilian. There are reductions in areas like vice detail, narcotics detail, canine, some of our bike units, reduction in overtime, our Blue Line contract, and eliminating the LBUSD contract. In fire, we put in a $1.9 million structural reduction, but we are also going to be bringing on some outside assistance to help us identify the way to hit that goal and goals in the future through a full review of our fire operations, both cost savings and revenue increases. We're transferring the heart team, we're eliminating a marine safety officer, and we're reducing some non-career lifeguard hours. And in disaster preparedness, we are reducing 2 dispatcher positions. We always look where we can to get administrative savings, and this budget has a lot of that. We are already incredibly lean, which means more people are going to have to do more work, and there will be a service impact. But we are reducing management and support positions and redistributing that workload as best we can, including in my office a net assistant to the city manager position, an assistant city traffic engineer, business license inspections, financial management staff, clerical staff, and suspending our management assistant program. In the area of cannabis, that was a new service that we brought on, and we had to bring on a pretty big team to learn how to do it. We have gotten efficient, and we are looking at a reduction of about 7 positions there. It's about a 30% reduction. Some of it is efficiencies. Some of it is going to be us responding slower to kind of new requests to look at cannabis policy or additional or dispensaries. In the area of community service, again, we strive to reduce things as much as possible. In the area of library, we really did not want to reduce a library, and so came up with a model of going from 9 libraries go from 5 days a week to 3, and the 3 newest flagship libraries go from 5 days a week to 7, so that they can serve the region and impacted communities. And then you heard the mayor ask us to take a pause on that and for a year and take a look, so we'll be talking about that with the council. We had to reduce some youth programming by an hour a day. We also are looking at how do we gain efficiencies in our property maintenance of the city's property. We are reducing in the Tidelands area. That is our money that is spent and is restricted to the beaches, including that marine safety officer and lifeguards. Our supplemental landscape contracting in parks, reducing in the Marine Bureau, reducing our landscape services and our tree trimming. In the special advertising and promotions, this is the fund that funds essentially arts, our convention business, special events, and communications. It has taken about a 40% reduction in hotel bed tax, and so it has a large deficit. And so we're reducing in special events in 2 positions, reducing in our office in communications, reducing the community concerts that recently were added, and some small reductions to the Museum of Art and Arts Council, and a reduction to the Convention and Visitors Bureau contract. And so all of this does have impacts. I want to talk a little bit about the impact on our employees who are just doing so much work right now for COVID. There are 136 positions impacted, 77 of which are filled positions, and 59 are vacant. These are estimates. We continue to do this work. The City Council will make the ultimate decisions on what the number of positions that are impacted, and then we will go through a process to determine the actual layoffs and who would be impacted. The employees have my commitment to do everything we can to prevent actual layoffs through moving people into applicable positions in other parts of the city, but it will be difficult. And so I do want to talk about, as difficult as some of these reductions are, we had a lot of options in front of us, and those options were even more difficult. So, there really isn't a lot left to cut. I won't go through this whole list, but it's important that you all know it's in the budget. I wanted to give people a sense of things that we were faced with that departments had to put on the table for consideration, like our gang units, like our engines, our homeless encampment money, closure of libraries, graffiti, tree trimming, pothole, park maintenance, all the things we know that are so important. We did not take these. These are not part of the recommendation, but they certainly were the options had we not put forward the budget we put forward. And so FY21 is balanced. It relies on both structural and one-time solutions. And I believe in that approach this year. That is not something we've done in the past, but the magnitude of the problem is so large. We are also trying to avoid service impacts to our residents who are struggling themselves with unemployment and loss of revenue. And there's a lot that we don't know. There's the potential for additional federal aid, for example, through the HEROES Act, which could be significant if that were to come our way and could change some of these estimates. And so our budget is balanced. The highlights are that $18.8 million in department reductions, adding 2.5 for racial equity, the potential for $11 million from employee furloughs or other solutions, and using reserves in the operating budget for $2.9 million. We are also using one-times in the budget, and normally we have one-time dollars to be able to invest, and this year we do not, but we have needs. So we have about $4.5 million in one-times, but we're looking for some help from our gas fund and using $3.3 million in reserves to fund those needs. And so what does the future look like? While this year is going to be very difficult, we have challenges ahead. We are still doing our estimates, and these do change, but we currently are looking at a $32 million deficit in FY22, another 23 the year after that, and another 22 the year after that. That doesn't factor in additional relief we might get from the federal government, but it is something we need to be aware of, as this is not just a one-year problem. We're seeing big reductions in our SAP fund, which may not recover for many, many years and could deplete all the funds available in that fund in a few short years. And we're seeing large impacts in our Tidelands Fund, which is down on the beach. And so I want to talk a little bit about the timeline. We started this back in December, came in March, and then had to suspend it because of COVID. And so we really picked up this issue again in May, and the budget has been incredibly truncated, which is why some of the documents and the process looks a little different than what you've seen in the past. We have a number of upcoming budget meetings. We are on schedule to do the normal budget process now and get that full amount of public input over the next 6 weeks, and it all needs to be adopted no later than September 15th. And so there are many ways to get involved. You can attend budget hearings, community meetings, a budget oversight committee meeting. We have a survey that we encourage you to fill out, and I believe we have over 4,000 responses already. And we have something new that we're launching today, which is a budget simulator challenge. You will be able to play mayor and city council to determine where you think you should invest and what cuts you might need to take, and take a look at that. And so again, we are a city of many accomplishments. We're a full-service city. We provide so many great services. I'm proud of our team for addressing the pandemic head-on, for addressing our major budget shortfall, and for recognition and action on racial equality, and we're committed to providing all the services that our community wants and expects. And I have to end by just saying a lot of thank you. I am just constantly impressed with the dedication of our city employees in these incredibly difficult times. They put themselves at risk for being emergency workers. They've been reassigned. Our police, our fire, our health are out there on the front lines, saving us, protecting our freedom of expression and our health through COVID-19. All departments have rallied to come together during this pandemic. We have our staff doing enormous work for reconciliation and equity in such a short time, our budget staff as well, our technology staff for adapting, our city clerk for figuring out how to do new ways of community engagement. And I want to thank our employee associations for really recognizing the serious challenges ahead and working with us at the bargaining table and being open to those discussions. And last but not least, our incredible leadership from our mayor and city council, our support from our elected officials like our auditor, our prosecutor, and our attorney, our city clerk, our civil service director, our harbor and water departments. This really is a true team effort, and I'm very proud to be the city manager at this very difficult time. So with that, we will turn it over to answer questions.
Thank you. And I want to just touch on a few things, and then we're going to answer some questions. And Mr. Modica has a lot of details, of course, if there's detailed questions. Just want to also add, I want to thank every member of the City of Long Beach organization for their just incredible work, especially in these last few months that relates to COVID. They're working at testing centers. They're picking up phone calls for businesses. They're working with our health department. So just thank you every single person for that really great work. Also, just want to just make a note to our employees. I think the city manager noted that we are in difficult budget times as it relates to cuts, but and because of the work that's happening at the bargaining table around furloughs, which are hard, and around other cuts, and what will likely be attrition. Of course, our hope is that we don't have layoffs, and I think that's something that, well, it's always a possibility. I also think it's highly likely that's not where we will end up. And so I think our job, we want to make sure that every person that has a job in this organization continues to have their job, especially in this tough economic time. And so that's something that we are not moving towards, and that I personally don't expect. Also want to again note that this is a health crisis, which is why the health department's budget is not being affected, but all the rest are. And two final notes. One is we have to also anticipate the possibility that the Congress at some point in the next few months or even early next year could pass the HEROES Act. And the city manager mentioned this. And I want to reemphasize this again, because if the HEROES Act as presented currently in the House, if that were to be adopted at some point, or a version of it, by the Senate, either in this Congress or in a new Congress early next year, that would bring significant local funding dollars to our city. And so if that's where the Congress and where the administration is come January or February, if there are changes, If it happens in the next few months before the end of the year even, that could actually help us make much larger investments and look at even some of the cuts that have been made in some of these critical functions to reinvest back into the community, into programs, into infrastructure, into equity, into so many programs that are important to the city. And then finally, I will just also add that the budget process really now enters a new phase. The staff's been working on this budget for 6 months. I've had a chance to review the budget, particularly over the last week. It's been typically the budget process for the staff and for me is longer, but it's been kind of shortened because of the COVID crisis. But now the work of the City Council begins, and over the next few weeks, month and a half ahead of us, the council will dig into the budget. They will make recommendations. They will make changes, and at the end of the day, the document that they adopt will become the document for fiscal year FY 2021. And so this is an opportunity now, of course, for the community to engage. The council will be holding hearings, the Budget Oversight Committee with Councilman Al Austin as chair, and the other council members will all engage with their own community and come back to the council and make the changes that they find necessary. And as a reminder for the community that beginning next year, we're going to really reimagine through this zero-based budgeting approach and hopefully bring the community in even earlier. So we are excited about that. And with that, Kevin, if there's any questions, we'll take those.
Thank you, Mayor. We have some questions from the media. First question comes from Haley at the Press Telegram. Haley, go ahead and ask 2 questions. Go ahead.
Okay, my first question is for Tom Modica. I'm wondering whether you can speak a little bit more about the specific amount of funding that's being cut from the police department and what that represents for the department's overall budget.
Is it 10.5? Yes, so the total amount, the net amount, because not only are there reductions in the police department, but they also are adding. There's a number of positions you'll see in the budget that are added for civilian positions, for analytic and data support. The net amount is $10.3 million, and it is roughly around a little bit more than 5% of their budget.
Haley,
Okay.
Go ahead with your second question.
Yeah, and my second question is, in terms of the projections around COVID and how long those impacts will last, can you just expand a little bit on that and what happens if the financial implications last longer than, we're currently expecting?
Yes, when you do budgeting, you have to make some assumptions, and we don't have a crystal ball. We try our best and say what we think might happen. We are currently estimating that COVID would be prolonged, that it would take, this is here for a while, but we are not expecting a second wave. We're currently still in the first wave. It is very difficult to know if it's going to get a lot worse or not, but we are trying to estimate that this is going to be with us for a while, but it certainly could get worse if the financial situation and the economic situation nationally gets worse.
All right, thank you, Mr. Modica. Next questions come from Jason at the Long Beach Post. Jason, go ahead and ask 2 questions.
Hey, thanks, Kevin. This question is actually, the first question is for the mayor. So as everybody's aware, there have been demonstrations in the streets since late May calling for systemic change in both the equality, but also where cities invest money. So in your opinion, how far does this budget go towards satisfying some of the demands of the protesters to invest in communities rather than the police department?
Well, I think that the budget that's being presented by staff and that we have in front of us certainly begins some of that work, and certainly has a significant reforms within the budget. There obviously is a real structural cut and across the departments. I think what we can point to, of course, is public health, reinvestments in programs around mental health, around social work, are also going to take time. And so I think that the budget does reflect some shifts in the way some departments are set up. We're really trying to look at, for example, calls for service and how and who should be responding to certain types of calls and how we do that. So part of this budget is studying and looking at that. I think Mr. Modica already spoke to the size of the cut. It's probably comparable or around the same, if not more, than some of the cuts you're seeing in other cities or our neighbors as far as those departments and the police department. And also, I think you're seeing some rethinking about programs like the Heart Team and how do we get more health involved in the work. I think what this budget starts to do is prioritize public health in a new way, which is I have heard loud and clear in the community, and I think everyone has, and I think COVID has really reinforced that. But I would also say that this budget process isn't over, and now it's an opportunity for the community to weigh in with the council and with the city, and the council will make additional changes, and the council does every single year. And to conclude, I have to go back to this zero-based budgeting approach. It's very hard to structurally kind of reimagine an entire budget, particularly when the budget process started probably 6-7 months ago. Upcoming, this next year's budget, there'll be a lot of opportunity to really rethink all the dollars we spent and how we should spend them and what's the best way we can do so. And that's something that, quite frankly, many members of the council have advocated for many years, and the community as well. And so I think that'll be a new process. Was there a second question?
Thank you, Mayor. Jason, do you have another question?
Yeah, actually I do. So this goes to the point that Mr. Modica made before my first question about not assuming that there would be a second wave of COVID-19. I know there's a lot of uncertainty around how long this pandemic might last, but I mean, to assume that there wouldn't be a second wave, why was that decision made?
Well, I think, and Tom can correct me wrong. I think that, we're assuming that this current wave is actually going to last much longer. And so I think that's estimated that we're anticipating this is going to last throughout this year, and it could be the beginning of and into next year. But we also, there's a lot of uncertainty there, but we also expect and think that if this COVID pandemic starts getting into early next year and going into the spring, the federal government and the state are going to have to and will need to step in again and provide support for cities. It is, at the end of the day, right now, the federal government is grossly underfunding the need. The fact that there's the unemployment insurance was expired is shameful. The fact that we don't have direct payments to Americans across the country in direct assistance every month is something that should be happening in this pandemic when people are out of work. And so there's a lot, I think, to expect. I think hopefully the health crisis will get better, but we are, I think, well positioned to continue to take care of the community.
Thank you, Mayor. That concludes our media questions.